Our next guest, a guy that covered the NBA for a long time, covered the NFL for a long time, covers the Philadelphia Eagles for us, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider, a guy that I love to talk to and catch up with, a guy that never gets a day off, although maybe he had Thanksgiving off. Not really, though, because he was watching football. That would be John McMullen. John, thrilled to have you back on the Pete Thompson Show.
Hey, PT, how are you?
I am doing well, sir. It is good to catch up with you. The Twitter question today is pretty easy. We'll lead with that. What are you thankful for on this last day of November 2019?
Well, I'm going to say my family because that's what you're supposed to say. But my dog, everybody knows I love my dog, Isabella.
That's true. Isabella, again, for the listeners, what kind of dog is Isabella?
She is a Beagle Bulldog.
All right. And how old?
She's getting up there like me. She's 9 years old.
A veteran pooch, a seasoned pooch. She understands how it works. I don't hear her barking as much anymore in your phone calls. I don't know if she's slowing down or if you're slowing down or both.
No, she's not slowing down. It's more me slowing down, I think, than anything else.
Well, the Eagles aren't slowing down, and they're finally giving you your wish, right? I mean, for a while you've said, I don't know why they don't just turn to some other receivers, and they're finally turning toward young receivers. That's something you wrote on our website at 973ESPN.com. I mean, boy, Eagles receivers have been bad. They really have no choice, right, but to go to the guys that are sitting there begging to be used.
Yeah, maybe not. There's always something with this team, and there's always an ulterior motive. I mean, remember, Zach Ertz popped up on the injury report, so he's dealing with a hamstring issue. Now, everybody expects him to play, but the question is, that's the type of injury that can limit you. Maybe you don't play as much as normal, or maybe you go down in the game, you can't finish the game. So the Eagles only have 2 tight ends on the roster, and they've been playing Tiger personnel, which is 12, which is 2 tight ends, Ertz and Goddard, on the field 70% of the time against Seattle. That's how much they've spiked. So if they have to limit that, that means somebody else has to play, and that's where J.J. Arcega-Whiteside comes in. Just remember, Nelson Aguilar said yesterday he's going to play. Alshon Jeffrey was supposed to play last week, and in theory should be ready to go this week. So those guys are going to be back as well. So I'll believe it when I see it, when the young receivers, and you can throw Greg Ward into that mix as well, get significant playing time.
And that walks right into, it was either Reuben Frank or Jimmy Kempski's tweet. One of those two tweeted out that the Dolphins have 5 defensive backs on IR or the PUP list, 4 week 1 starters. They traded Minkah Fitzpatrick. 3 of those replacements at DB are questionable for Sunday. The point was, if the Eagles can't throw on this team, they can't throw on anybody.
Yeah, this team is a mess. It's probably the least talented team in football when they are healthy, and they're doing that on purpose. I always tell Mike Gill, no city knows more about tanking than Philadelphia because of the 76ers. But anyone who really understands it knows that coaches and players don't tank. Executives do. And that's what's happened in Miami. They've taken every talented player. You mentioned Minkah Fitzpatrick. Also, Laramie Tunsil is one of the best young left tackles in football. I have no idea why they traded these players away, but they did, and they are where they are. And you have to give, if anything, you have to give Brian Flores credit, who's a first-year rookie head coach, who's still got them playing and playing hard, and they got 2 wins that they have no right having. So those executives who want that first pick, they're not going to get that first pick.
John, you have to be both, you have to think, I mean, from a layman's standpoint, too, this is the perfect time then for Carson Wentz to maybe relieve some of the pressure and the outside noise that he's hearing. And you wrote that article this week, too, as well. He's turning down that outside noise. Were you surprised when Michael Vick came out sort of questioning whether Carson's the face of the franchise and should he be the face of the franchise? Or did you see it like I did, which is Michael Vick is now working for Fox Sports. You get paid to have an opinion on Fox Sports, and you get paid more and maybe get a better glowing employee review when you come out with something strong against the team you played for.
Yeah, more the latter. And it's not just Fox. It's just industry in general, unfortunately. The more, I don't want to say outrageous, but the more notable the take is, the more it's going to get noticed. But he was also asked a question. It wasn't like he just popped out of his head.
Right.
And there is some context to it. I think he did couch it with because of what Nick Foles had done. And you already see it, Pete. I mean, it is true. There is a segment of this fan base where that is the expectation. And if you don't go win a Super Bowl, you're a failure now. So, I mean, if that's the expectation, then odds are he's going to be a failure. I think most people are a little bit more logical and understand it takes more than a quarterback to win a Super Bowl. You know, remember back to 2017, Nick Foles didn't start the season and finish the season as the Super Bowl champion. Carson Wentz got him to 11-2 as the quarterback, and not to mention everybody else did so well. From personnel evaluation on down, you talk about the personnel on this team. Remember that year, Pete, Howie Roseman hit on all of those short-term contracts, whether it was Patrick Robinson, Chris Long,
right,
players like that, not happening this year. And they call it special. They call it a special season for a reason. It's not easy. Not easy to repeat unless you're the Patriots.
John McMullen with us, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider at JF McMullen is his Twitter handle. You know, defenders, John, come from all areas and all walks of life. And I thought after the Seattle game, and this went viral, a lot of people picked up on it. You know, Dan Orlovsky broke down, you know, put like, what, a 2.5 minute Twitter like replay up of like showing a couple of these throws, basically saying, you know, look, you can get on Carson all you want, but the wide receivers are awful.
Yeah, and I thought Dan did a really nice job, and that's an example where you have an analyst doing a good job educating people. Because I think, you know, you look at that Greg Ward pass, for instance, and I go all the way back. People are saying, oh, he's Donovan McNabb. He's throwing those worm burners. I got news for you. That was a perfect pass. If the receiver's where he's supposed to be, that's you think that's great. And if he isn't, you blame it on the quarterback. And that's why I go all the way back. You know, people say today how Donovan would throw him in the dirt. Well, if you're supposed to be at the sticks and he's throwing it where it's supposed to be, looks like it's in the dirt if you're going a yard or two past it. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And it isn't. Everybody just had Thanksgiving. I'm sure a lot of people had their turkey bowl. It isn't just where you go out and go run to a spot and you throw it. In the NFL, the defensive backs are so good. Ball's got to be out sometimes before a receiver even turns into his route. And that's why chemistry and that's why hitting your landmarks, and as Dan called it, you can't fool your quarterback. You have to be where you're supposed to be. And in defense of the coaching staff, that's one of the reasons J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Greg Ward, even Miles Sanders haven't played as much as people want them to play, because they're not, like most young players, they're not always where they're supposed to be.
So, John, how about when they go into this Miami game tomorrow, they've got the Dolphins. I mean, we talked about the how limited the Dolphins are, and yet there's narratives out there. I love the headline Bob Ford had up. Eagles still capable of choking on a cupcake.
I love Bob as well, but he's wrong. They are not capable. I can't imagine in any circumstance that they'd lose this football game. And one of the reasons why you're having the implosion you're seeing in Dallas more than what's going on the football field, Jerry Jones sees the schedule, and he knows what that schedule is. And he knows, as poorly as the Eagles are playing, and this is not a credit to Philadelphia, it's just luck. It's just how things have broken for them. And this is the easiest of the easiest. You know, you talk about a 3-week stretch of 2-win teams, Miami, New York Giants, Washington Redskins, and then you finish the season with New York again, I mean, that's putting it on the tee. That's not facing 102 mile an hour fastball. That's as easy as it gets in this league. And that's why, as I said, you're seeing the implosion, because it's going to come down to week 16. And the way the Cowboys are playing, by the way, Pete, it might not even come down to that.
That's right. They
might lose multiple games.
Yeah, they could lose on the road to the Bears, or they could lose at home to the Rams. Yeah,
and if they lose to both of them, the Eagles actually have some cushion. So they're not a good team, Philadelphia. But I got news for you, and I'm saying it right now on your show.
Neither is Dallas.
Have a home playoff game.
Oh, that's the first. Let's say it again, son. I'll shut up. Say it again.
I'm saying it right on the Pete Thompson show. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to have a home playoff game because they're going to be NFC East champions.
See how I was quiet that time so we could pull that for the actuality and the sounder and play it throughout the week. John McMullen said. John McMullen, our guest here on the Pete Thompson Show on 97.3 ESPN. Yeah, no doubt, Johnny, the Cowboys have just unraveled. I described it as like leaking motor oil and transmission fluid all over the road. I mean, parts of the engine are falling out. But Hunter and I went back and forth before you came on to finish up the 8 o'clock hour with why they haven't gotten rid of Jason Garrett. And my argument was that symbolically you would send a message to the players of, you can't blame Garrett's incompetence anymore. Well, just, this is on you guys, not the coaching staff. And he thought, no, you don't make a move in season. But I know there's people that have been calling for Garrett's head even the previous loss.
Well, I always like to explain the Dallas is different than other places. I mean, as a reporter, Jerry Jones talked to reporters 28 minutes after that game. 28 minutes. Now, if I were to check my recorder and all the times I've had access to Jeffrey Lurie, I might have to get to 4 years to get to 28 minutes. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but certainly 2 years. And this is every game. That's a little bit more than a typical game. He's a different owner. He wants to be involved. He's obviously the GM. He wants the day-to-day stuff. He had Jimmy Johnson. He didn't like it because Jimmy Johnson got the credit. He had Bill Parcells. He didn't like it because Bill did what he wanted, headstrong guy. So he got a coach that would do what he wanted. That is what he wants. And the coaching staff is different as well. He took play calling away from Jason Garrett years ago. So he doesn't have the typical power of a head coach. The defensive coordinator, Rod Marinelli, isn't the defensive coordinator. That's Chris Richard. That's the guy who calls the defensive.
There's two, right? Don't they have like a linebacker? Don't they have two D coordinators?
Yeah, well, Chris Richard is the passing game coordinator, defensive passing game coordinator. But he's really the defensive coordinator because he's the one who gets to call the plays, call the defense.
All right.
Point I'm trying to make is Jerry does not do things in a traditional NFL fashion. So if you're trying to compare it to other situations, it's useless because he has so much input and such a stamp on the team, whereas most owners, Jeffrey Lurie being an example, they just hire people to do their jobs and they go to the background. And if there is an issue, then they'll step in, make a decision. He is micromanaging. He's there day to day, talks after every game, has his own radio show. So you can add that on top of it. And Jason Garrett is there because that's what Jerry Jones wanted. Now, at some point, and it seems like he's at that point, he'll try to bring in whether it's Urban Meyer or Josh McDaniels, people have speculated on. But McDaniels' case, you have to be very wary because you're not going to have the power of a traditional head coach. So do you want to be Barry Switzer? He'll pay you a lot to be Barry Switzer. He'll pay you a lot to be Jason Garrett, but you're not going to be a traditional NFL coach.
John McMullen with us here on the Pete Thompson Show. You know, John, when the Eagles got to 5-4, I know there was a lot of narrative about Jordan Howard and the 42 carries he had in the 2 games leading up to that 5-4 record. At the time, they said, he would have had another week of 20-plus carries if he didn't go to the sideline for a medical evaluation in the fourth quarter. That medical evaluation is now turned into a couple games missed for Jordan Howard and maybe another game missed for Jordan Howard. Do you think he'll be out for a third consecutive game?
Well, I don't think it's trending positively, as Doug would say. That's his new term. He's not cleared for contact again on Friday, 48 hours before the game. So that's a very short window to get cleared for contact. I mean, from a practice standpoint, I don't think that's that big of a deal because there barely is any hitting and contact in an NFL practice this late in the season. So I think if he's healthy, if he's ready to go, if he's cleared, they'll get him back out there. But I just don't think that hurdle is going to be able to overcome. And it is, I think that is probably the one part of this team that, if anything, people overlook because that was their identity. They had found something with Jordan Howard being the lead back and Miles Sanders being the complement. And now everybody's talking about, well, just give the ball to Miles, just give the ball to Miles. He's explosive. He's the only explosive player you have. That part of it's true, but I go back to the young receivers, and Doug Peterson said it this week very quietly. Nobody brought it up when he was talking about Carson's struggles, and he said, and Miles has got to be in the right spot. Same thing with the young players. A lot of times, pass protection, when he's supposed to be the safety valve of a particular passing play, he's not where he's supposed to be, and that creates issues. And that's why it's difficult to make him a lead back who's going to touch it as much as Jordan Howard was touching it.
So if Jordan Howard can't play, what a great narrative, and you write about this, the fact that Ajayi is returning to Miami for the first time since he left the Dolphins organization, and all of a sudden, Ajayi could play a prominent role in tomorrow's game.
Yeah, I mean, remember, he signed on the Friday before the Patriots game, so he was dressed only in case of emergency. Last week he got 6 carries. So I think it's naturally going to ramp up a little bit more. Maybe you get up to 12, and maybe you have a nice split with him and Miles Sanders. And who knows? I mean, Jay is that type of guy. It's a lot like Jordan Howard as far as a physical runner, as far as a bigger back that can move the pile. No more athleticism when he's healthy, but we don't know what Ajayi is really because he's signed 13 months coming off his ACL, so we don't know if he's the same player he once was. But the player he once was, in that 2016, Pete, he had 3 200-yard games for the Dolphins. Yeah. 3 different. Only 3 guys in the history of the NFL have done that besides Jay, and 2 of them are in the Hall of Fame, O.J. Simpson, Earl Campbell, and the other one is Tiki Barber. So he had a spectacular 2016, but one of the reasons he dropped in the draft when he was a rookie was he had a degenerative knee condition. Now you have another ACL on top of it, so he may never be the same guy, but the Eagles need him this week, that's for sure.
Yeah, certainly not a long-term fix. I think Mike Gill might have had him that year in fantasy football, that season you're talking about when he had those 200-plus rushing games, because I remember he kept texting me and saying, one by week again. You know, MG never texts you. I don't know about you, but he never texts me when he loses the week. He just texts me when he wins the week. John McMullen with us here on the Pete Thompson Show. So we're talking about short-term fix, long-term fix. It's not Christmas yet, but how he's handing out money, John. A couple of deals, including Lane Johnson, the most recent deal. Let's go in order with them. Recent first, and then we'll back our way into Jake Elliott and Lovato and all the deals. What do you make of how he handed out money?
Well, that's what he does, and he learned from Joe Banner, and that's the part of Howie's job that he's really good at. And, you know, once you identify a player you want to keep, you sign him, and you sign him as early as possible because it's only going up. And it's only going to go up even more when the new CBA is signed, which is probably going to be in the next off season. And the salary cap's only going to go up and up and up. And you've already seen it with Carson Wentz. I mean, people said, highest paid quarterback of all time, highest paid player of all time, and now you have Dak Prescott. You see the way Dak Prescott is playing. Well, the Cowboys waited. They're going to have to pay much more, essentially a penalty for waiting and not being proactive. So that's kind of what the Eagles do. They've done it with Brandon Brooks, as you mentioned, Lane Johnson. So Brandon's the highest paid guard. Lane is the highest paid offensive lineman. And everybody goes, wow. Hey, you know how these things work.
Right.
You're only the highest paid until the next guy's up. And the Eagles essentially get a deal. And they did the same thing even in lesser positions with Jake Elliott and Rick Lovato, the long snapper. If the Eagles identify you and they want to keep you, they're going to strike early. And it's been consistent, as I said, dating back to the days of Joe Banner. And it's the right way to do business in this league.
Yeah, you just hit on one of my father's favorite sayings. My father, who I spent Thanksgiving with, and I'm thankful for him, a couple days ago. He's 81, and I feel like I can hear it in my head over and over and over again. Peter, be proactive, not reactive.
Exactly, and he should talk to the NFL as a whole, because that's my biggest criticism. They're never proactive, the league as a whole. They're always reacting. And if you're reacting, you're in trouble.
So it's Lane Johnson, $54.955 million guaranteed, right? That 4-year, $72 million contract extension that came out yesterday. That news broke yesterday. He had 2 more years left on that original 5-year extension, but that's what they're doing. They're locking up the core players. Brandon Brooks, so we would expect, I guess, Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson both to play tomorrow. Jake Elliott, long snapper, Rick Lovato, I mentioned. Who's next? I guess the names Ertz or Jenkins could be on the to-do list.
Yeah, Malcolm is the one that's difficult for a number of reasons, and it kind of points to the ugliness of the NFL, because you have to make difficult decisions, and that's a guy who's done everything for the Eagles, and Jim Schwartz mentioned it again this week. Second straight year he's played 7 different positions at times on his defense. The most versatile player in the NFL. He does whatever he's asked. He never leaves the field, plays every play, plays special teams for Dave Fipp when Dave needs it. But he's a descending player as well. And part of the reason why he's a descending player is because of what I just said. He never stops. Forget about a game. This is a guy who doesn't miss a practice. You remember back in the offseason, did stay away from voluntary work because he wanted a tweak to his deal because the guaranteed money was up. And, the thought was the Eagles were sort of giving him a weak wink because he had so much time on his deal. They didn't want to set a bad precedent by an extension, because then other people come knocking on your door a little bit too early. And maybe that it ends up being the case, but this is one of those decisions. And this is what the Patriots have been brilliant at, Pete. And their theory is it's better to give up on a player a year early than a year late. Mm-hmm. And hey, that's you really. And the Eagles have, whether it's Jason Peters, Deshaun Jackson, Darren Sproles, if there's too much sentimentality with older players and you sign them and they break down, this year's a perfect example of what can happen.
Yeah, that sentimentality, though, I mean, it's so tough, too, with this organization, because the fan base always thinks of Dawkins, right? They always think like he had more left in the tank and they cut him loose too early.
But he really didn't.
Yeah.
They really didn't. They actually made the right decision on Brian Dawkins. Now, when I say you give up a player a year too early, a year too late, doesn't mean they can't play at all. It means in the cost benefit, you're looking at it and saying, this is clearly a descending player. We clearly have to move on. We're going to get more value from a younger player at much less money. And he's probably going to be completely kaput in a year or two down the line. That was the case with Brian Dawkins. The Eagles were 100% right with their decision there. But yeah, I mean, people are going to say, oh, he had 75 tackles, whatever he had in Denver. He had more left in the tank. Yeah, Yeah, a little bit more, but the Eagles made the right decision.